Save big during Labor Day at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off select major appliances. Plus, buy more to get up to an additional 20% off. Shop even more savings with 3 Stay Green 1 cubic foot vegetable and flower garden soil bags for $10. This Labor Day, take care of your home for less at Lowe's. We help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location. Select locations only. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams Labor Day sale and get 35% off paints and stains August 22nd through September 4th. With prices starting at $31.84, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
I'm Hannah Polskin, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist.
Hello and welcome to Art, the podcast where we get to know women from around the world of visual arts. I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Season 3, Episode 18. My guest this week is the multidisciplinary artist and designer Hannah Polskin. Hannah combines fine art and design to create a free-form aesthetic that melds across each project. She is most inspired when she has free rein to take over an entire space, which includes paintings, mirrors, kitchen islands, rugs, menorahs, etc., thus creating an entire visual concept. Hannah was born in New York City in 1989, the youngest of 2 daughters to parents Philippa and Howard Polskin, both of whom worked in public relations. It was in this environment that Hannah became enamored with office and studio spaces surrounded by her mother's art collection. This gave her the foundation for her ambitions in art and design, so it was a natural choice for her to pursue a career in this field. She attended the Savannah College of Art and Design, graduating in 2007 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Fashion Design. Hannah then spent 9 years working in consumer insights with a Fortune 500 company, which gave her a range of skills that would help her develop her own business. In 2016, she established her own studio in Los Angeles, and in 2019 held her first solo show. She describes her style as calm and serene, with an energy that becomes therapy, while embracing life and love. Her goal is to continue to expand her art to include other mediums such as doors, antiques, jewelry, Roman coins, candles, and tabletop sculptures. Hannah lives in Los Angeles with her husband, Gil Manzuri. Hannah, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
This, I believe, is your podcast debut.
Yes, it is. It's my first go. Let's see how we do.
Well, congratulations. Are you a podcast listener generally?
I am. I really run the gamut. I even listen to a bunch of podcasts while I paint.
Do you?
I do, yeah.
Favorites?
I do. Well, of course, yours. Always so inspiring to hear how other artists go about their craft. And I listen to a bunch of political podcasts. I love to stay up on the news, business strategy podcasts. There's a podcast I love called Group Chat. There is a podcast I love called Divorce Not Dead, which is following actually one of my art collectors that I watched forever on Bravo. So there's everything from relationship advice to business strategy. I gobble it all up.
A wide range of interests then. Has that always been the case? Have you always, had a busy mind?
I love that, a busy mind. Guilty as charged. I have, yeah. It's hard for me to stay on one track specifically, and I feel like the branching out into different pockets of information just sort of rounds you out, especially as an artist. It opens your eyes to things.
So is that busy mind then in the studio, or can you turn it off and really zoom in?
Miraculously, when there is a paintbrush in my hand or a saw, I can completely hone in and focus. It's amazing. I'll have something on in the background, but my mind for the most part goes blank, which is really lovely. I feel a bit like a sponge as I paint. I can just kind of absorb the energy of what I'm painting, absorb what I'm listening to. My mind goes very still when I'm creating, which is a total godsend.
But I saw from your playlist, quite a range of interests in terms of music genres. So is music allowed into the studio?
It is these days. I'm listening to podcasts more than music. It goes in phases. With listening to music, it really is a beautiful element to my studio practice. Having that on, it just sets you up for the day. So that is a very key component to the vibe, the atmosphere of the studio. But, every day I kind of wake up and see what I'm into, what I'm in the mood for. And, if you hit shuffle on my iPhone on Spotify, you'll be surprised with what comes up. And I like that.
Are you a sing-along girl? Is that something that you would do in the car?
Totally. Again, guilty as charged. I have 4 summers at theater camp under my belt. So show tunes, pop music, rock and roll, whatever it is, I'm singing along to it.
How do you transition when you go to your studio each day, Hannah, to switch off from routine of life?
Well, it's interesting. Since 2016, when I really got going with my paintings, I've had a home studio. So I've always dedicated either a spot in the living room when I was starting out, or now, luckily, the second bedroom in my house is the dedicated room to just creating. I rip the carpets up. It's just like a white box filled with art supplies of all kinds to make whatever occurs to me in the moment. And I feel like I'm never really switching off. It's more just, throughout the day, I'm tucking into my creativity in this dedicated space. And I think there's an impulsiveness to how I create that requires having a space and having materials on hand to be able to just sort of drop everything and, head into that space that really is pretty limitless for me.
Is anyone else allowed in the studio? I know you have a partner, Gil. Is he invited in to critique your work?
Oh, yes. I always love getting his read on things. It's funny because with him, this was actually in our vows a couple weeks ago. We just got married.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Anything I've ever shown him that I've made, it's the same response from him. He's like, that's sick. Wow. He's such a fan. It's incredible. And actually, that's how we met. He, in 2020, he actually bought my art and we hadn't met. And then, when he picked up the art, I wasn't there. It was COVID. Everything was contactless. And then a year later, he saw me on a dating app. So it's kind of baked into our marriage at this point that he loves my work.
But that wasn't a condition, obviously, but it helps, isn't it?
Oh, yes. I require everyone I date, they have to actually sign a waiver. I will not critique Hannah's work. No. Yeah, it's crazy how it worked out, honestly.
Yeah, that he became a keeper.
Yes. Oh, yeah. He's the best.
So once you get into that studio, then thinking of the type of work that you do, Hannah, seems to be very large format. Presumably you have a large room there to spread out.
Yes. It's not huge. It's Actually, it's smaller than the one I was in for the last 4 years. We moved in here. We've been here for a year, but before that, I had a bigger place. But it's all just, you work with what you've got. Yeah, we're in Beverly Hills now. It's a really beautiful studio. And not only does, of course, my husband comes in and looks at my work. I have people, I have a studio assistant who helps me, who works in there. And then my favorite thing to do is have prospective collectors come into the studio. I basically have my living room set up like a gallery. So this is kind of like the showcase and display area, which is where I'm speaking to you from right now. And then I love bringing people back to the second bedroom that's converted into a studio so they can see where the sausage gets made.
I'm interested in your concept, Anna, and how you begin a project, because they all seem to me to be sort of large format. You think big.
Yes.
Is this how you've always started off, or did you just get bigger and bolder as your confidence developed as a professional artist?
Well, I've always loved oversized, and I'm a classically trained artist. I went to art school. But when I started honing in on this style, 2016, around there, I was very driven towards wood instead of canvas. And I've always loved oversized works. But the thing with working with wood is it's readily available in these massive 8-foot by 4-foot slabs. And I just fell in love with them, and I loved the heaviness, and I loved getting splinters, and I loved seeing the wood grain and the natural material and how it smelt and how it felt in my studio as I was painting. So I think just by gravitating towards wood, that kind of sent me down a path of, creating things at large scale, because I kind of wanted to expose as much of the wood as possible. So there'd be like a really interesting knot in the wood over here. And then there'd be a cool sort of zigzaggy grain section at the bottom. And I wouldn't be able to choose, which area I wanted to keep. So that really drove the decision to, okay, I'm making a 6-foot piece or I'm making an 8-foot piece. It's not necessarily because I always had the space, but actually when I was starting out, there were like months where I would move my furniture into the hallway of the building in West Hollywood, where I was living for a few years, and just to be able to lay all my wood on the floor and paint. My neighbors loved me.
Well, I'm with you with the wood. I'm a lover of wood and wood art and indulge myself too. So I totally get it, how the grain is so inspiring, how you can follow the grain and the grain patterns. And you work with some very interesting woods, I noticed, very rare woods, and more difficult to find.
Yes.
Where do you source them?
From all over. I'm still pinching myself because I started off in the scrap bins of Home Depot. Because when you get started, you're like, where do I get wood? And I've always loved shopping at hardware stores. I love all the odds and ends. I have such respect for people who know what they're all the names of all of them and how they're used. It's incredible to me. It's like a long lost dictionary or something. But I started off there. Just really bottom of the barrel type of wood. And by the way, still love painting on that type of wood. There's like a rawness to it. And now, I'm just pinching myself that I'm working with burl, which is basically like the caviar of wood. Burl is incredible. And there's a lot of places to source it, actually. And I have like all my spots on the West Coast pinned down. The other day I was actually speaking to a lumberyard in like outside of Vegas that had a very particular species I'm looking for. And the cool thing about wood is, and sometimes it's frustrating. It's not man-made. So sometimes you'll get a strain or a species that has a really interesting spice to it. The color's pinkish, all of a sudden. And we can't really account for why that is other than Mother Nature. And I can't get that wood again. So, sometimes, of course, there's more reliable types of burl that all come out, in a similar fashion, but sometimes you get that like Halley's Comet wood. And, unfortunately, people want to collect something similar and that one's sold. The answer is, well, I'll keep an eye out, but that's kind of the magic of it is it truly makes each piece so unique because it's like a collaboration between me and nature.
Oh, yes. Each piece, especially burls.
Yes.
Are unique. And I envy you. I really do envy you. I love burls. Anytime I can get my hand on an interesting curly burl, I'm after it.
Exactly. You know that in the 60s and 70s, I think around there, they used to, when they would get a piece of burl wood at a lumberyard, they would throw it away because there was like, well, this isn't very stable. And then, yeah.
Well, starting with this wood, then, I'm thinking of concepts now, Hannah, because it seems to me as a designer, you like to look at the space it's going, right? That's important.
Yes.
And it also seems to me that you probably walk into a space or when you get a commission, say, okay, where's the space? How much of the space can I use? Because you like to overlap your concepts too. And of course, each concept is unique as well. It's individual. Where did that thought process start in your mind? That because you graduated, we're going to talk about school in a moment, where you graduated. But I'm wondering, in the course of your career, where this conception started with you and why you thought this is my model.
It's so interesting because in terms of the oversized works, I think my art comes from a pure place and a selfish place. It's me genuinely in my home looking around and wanting to see something different. And so basically in my head, I'm like, I want to max out all these walls. I want to turn this environment into my showcase. I have this North Star headline in my head that I feel I'm always working towards, that I'm manifesting, which is Hannah Polskin is coming for your whole house. Like I want to be on every wall down to the doorknobs. I have ambitions of creating absolutely everything that you live with. And that, for me, that's driven me towards functional sculptures. I've done rugs, TV cabinets, shelving. I'm sort of insatiable when it comes to what I live with every day. So it's interesting. It really does come from a selfish place of what I want. And I think Rick Rubin has a quote along those lines that art has to come from, this sort of selfish space. If you don't love it and you're not obsessed with it, you can't expect anyone else to be. And that is... It really has come from a mindset of what I want to be surrounded with and how I want to live. I want to be surrounded by art. I want everything to look a certain way. Actually kind of drives me crazy in a way. Yeah. I get impatient because there's, I'll tease that I'm actually bringing out a tissue sculpture. So it's this beautiful, like rocking egg design to home your Kleenex. And, that was something that's just been an eyesore for me around the house. And I finally sat down and designed it and I'm, about ready to launch it. And it's taken me a few years to get to this point, and I want to do that with everything. So I just need time.
Does this spill over to your own home? Everywhere you look, every room? Oh,
yes. That's ground zero. Yes. My home is a laboratory. and my husband is a saint because I'm just trying to redo everything all the time. And yeah, it's I am my own lab rat in that way. But it's nice because what it means is that by the time I put out a piece of art for the world, I've lived with it and I've tested it and I've fallen in love with it. And every day it has to kind of sing for its supper in a way. Otherwise, I'm putting something else up on the wall or I'm making something new. So I have like total conviction in what I'm putting out in a way because I've lived with it personally and it hasn't bothered me. And I'm picky.
So in the kitchen, then, you're combining form and function. Is that like the ultimate challenge for you, the kitchen?
Oh, well, it's so funny you say the kitchen because first of all, this is so not my jurisdiction. Chris, if you ever come to LA and I mean, if I ever invite you for a meal that I've cooked, just say no. We'll go out to eat. We'll go somewhere else. It is diabolical what I make in the kitchen. It is so unhinged. I know how to hard boil an egg. Even that I sometimes mess up. But the other day, someone said to me, what about a fridge? I mean, why aren't I making a fridge, a microwave, a toaster, all of these things? So, yeah, there's really nothing off limits to me, but I rest assured the kitchen will probably be at the bottom of the list just because it's not somewhere I frequent.
How about the bathroom?
Well, I have my forthcoming tissue sculpture, so that would certainly go there. The bathroom could be a very interesting place. Just when you think of the faucets and all the hardware, I can tell you right now, I'm not thrilled with the towel rack. So there's definitely room. Every single room it's just ripe for experimentation. That would be such an interesting way to organize myself if I went room by room. I like that, Chris. I'm also so interested in light fixtures, hanging pendants and sconces. I feel I could really do something interesting in that space. I have a few sketches, but it just, I think I'm averaging 1 to 2 new designs in terms of sculpture or household items a year. And I'd love to speed it up, but I will never sacrifice, the design and something I really love for getting it out there faster. So this is my pace for now.
Let's go back to that little girl, Hannah, growing up in New York City. How that creative little mind started. And it started early because you've always been surrounded by art then from your parents, Philippa and Howard, but they inspired you, or your mother had a lot of art, so you were surrounded by art. Tell me how that was something that you absorbed and felt that you could be creative too. This was something as a medium that you could embrace.
Yes, I grew up surrounded by art. My mom, both my parents work in communications and PR, and my mom does communications in the art world. And so everything on the walls in our home really sparked curiosity in me from a young age. And I would love going to her office and going through all the art books. And it's funny, I have this side of me that's very almost corporate. Like I loved an office from a very, very early age. And she would tell you that I've been doodling these shapes that have now taken on large scale formats since day dot. I was drawing these curves and wiggles, and this was just always what happened for me when I put crayon to paper, pencil to paper. This is what comes out. So it seems there was just something innate there. And then, of course, the environment I grew up in New York City, and with all this beauty on the walls and ceramics. My mom loved shigaraki Japanese pottery that was all over our house growing up. I definitely think it has a strong influence on my work for sure.
It would seem to be, because if you're surrounded by beauty, it's something that, develops a standard in your mind, right? Of a design standard.
Absolutely.
And conceptually too. And so were your parents encouraging you then to sketch and design ideas, or it wasn't just, the color book and crayons for you? It was something more sophisticated.
Yeah. My whole family always so supportive, and I was always like an art kid. I was doing a lot of musical theater, and then towards junior high and high school, it became more visual art focused. And I was doing sewing lessons and after school, and I was going to the Art Students League on 57th Street and doing figure drawing classes and lithography classes. And, that was a lot more interesting to me than SAT prep and math class for sure. And yeah, I always had a really strong extracurricular world of art. And then I think it was the summer before my senior year of high school, I got into the RISD pre-college program. And, that was like a really immersive 6-week summer program on how to make clothes. And then it culminated in like a catwalk runway show. And it was awesome. I think I made my clothing out of comic books. You had to choose something other than fabric, if memory serves correct. And from there I was hooked. I was like, all right, I'm going to art school. That's what I'm doing. And I only applied to 2 art schools, and which my parents were really supportive of. And I had an incredible experience in college. So, no regrets. It was definitely the right fit for me.
It seems to be, carved out for you. From an early age, and I'm wondering what kind of a student you were. Were you a dedicated student then, because you had such a passion for the arts?
I was. Just as supportive as my family was about, the arts, good grades was a non-negotiable. That was, and I think we had 4 hours of homework a night. I feel my work ethic was really drilled into me by my parents, and the middle school and high school I went to was not messing around. I really feel like that. It was a very intense time. And yeah, so, really just striving for top marks. That was something that was drilled into me.
What did you do for fun?
I had always had dance classes on the weekends, which I absolutely loved. I was a ballerina, for years and years. I had fun, in kind of like a geeky art school way. all of it was fun,
And as a small child, what were you doing for fun? Because you have an older sister, Lily. How much difference is there in age?
Lily is 3.5 years older than me.
Were you close when you were growing up?
Yes, yeah. Always, yes. She, it's interesting. She has super, different end of the spectrum, very different interests than me. She was always into medicine, and she's amazing, but she's not artsy like I am, which is is so common in siblings, right?
Were you a girly girl, though, or did you go outdoors and play a lot? Were you sporty? I'm not seeing that side of you, but maybe there was a rough and tumble side, was there, as you were a child?
The least sporty you could ever imagine that was me. Like I'm like my training and practice, that was like a dress rehearsal for the school musical. I'm not like on the volleyball team or yeah, no, that's again not my jurisdiction.
So does fitness interest you now, though? Now,
Yes.
you've got to this point in your life. Are you active in some other interests, that are fitness, working out, and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. I think it's actually a really important counterpart to creating and making art, because I do have this sort of restless mind. I need to expel some energy every day. Whether it's a long walk or Pilates or any type of, cardio, I really feel like I can't keep it all together if I'm not working out. It's a very important thing for me mentally, really.
So working out, but not competitive in any way.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, still no sports for me, really. I had a tennis moment in there, but it became frustrating how I could not improve. I'll put it that way.
So when you were in art school, then you decided that was absolutely it. There was no other interests that, apart from art, you knew the pathway you were going to take. So what happened when you graduated?
So when I graduated with a BFA from the Savannah College of Art and Design in fashion design. And I loved it. I loved making clothes. I loved pattern making, making tech packs. And from there, I had a 9-year career in trend forecasting and consumer insights, which was kind of an offshoot from apparel design. But it was a very sort of anthropological, psychological job where we had to understand where consumer sentiment was, purchasing patterns, and sort of decode all of this for Fortune 500 clients that would call and say, how do I get a millennial X type of consumer to want to drink our drink or shop in our stores or, wear our SPF. We had a huge range of clients from entertainment to beauty to fashion. And I absolutely loved this. I loved the job. It was creative, design focused, but also required you to really keep an ear to the ground in terms of trends and what people were doing and how they were living. And that was a very formative few years for me because I feel like I took all of that and it's baked into my art in a way. And it really taught me how to be a businesswoman as well. I feel like it was a crash course in business that has served me very well today, taught me how to write an email, the lost art of writing an email, and how to speak to people professionally. It was awesome. So that it was honestly very hard when I had to choose between my job that I loved for so many years, and I simply just did not have enough time to make the paintings I wanted to make. And ultimately, my art career was born when I resigned. So, yeah, I had this fork in the road.
Yeah, where did you do that, Anna?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I really started focusing on this way of painting in 2016. In 2019, I had my first solo show, and I was doing both all throughout this time. And then in the end of 2020 was when I resigned.
In New York that you were doing that? Who was that with?
Yes. So that was with the Toby Report, which is part of the Doniger Group. a fashion forecasting company.
And I would imagine, as you did allude to just now, it taught you a lot of things that were going to be helpful to you. But it's a big decision to make that jump. We have to transition in some way, and obviously you were working on your art to some extent during that time then. But how did you come to the point in deciding I can make a living doing my art, so I'm actually going to jump ship?
Well, it's funny. I'm a very risk averse person naturally. And at the time there was so much chatter around entrepreneurialism and girl bossing, and it felt like it was such a trend to go off and do your own thing. But I really never was really geared that way. I loved my job and I loved the stability of it. And, again, back to that little girl in my mom's office, I just loved it. I thought it was the coolest place ever. And so it came down to just not having enough hours in the day. And I'm really someone who can't do anything unless I'm giving it 120%. I'm kind of a perfectionist in that way. And I'm also a huge fan of putting in nights and weekends. That was always my philosophy because I wanted to do both so badly. And painting gave me so much pleasure and stability and made me feel so good that if I'm doing that late at night after work, if I'm doing that on the weekends, I'm not feeling like I'm missing anything. I'm perfectly happy. So for a while I could sustain doing both. But then as I became more ambitious with my art and it started going into sculpture and mirrors, it was simply a lack of time to do both. So, yeah. And, I made the right decision. It was definitely the right call and I'm thrilled I did it. But, those 9 years taught me so much. In a way, I'm here, in part because of that the business acumen that I got and all of that through my work.
When did you start getting your first commissions, Hannah?
So my first commissions, interestingly, came through a site called Cherish, which is where a lot of interior designers shop for vintage. And it's kind of like eBay, but for art and interior design. And in around 2017, I was new to Los Angeles. I was heartbroken. I just gone through a really big breakup, and I really didn't know a lot of people in the city. I had just moved from New York, and on the weekends, I simply did not have plans. I had no one to call, and I would go to flea markets every weekend in LA. It also was nice because it really showed me the city. I was going to the Pasadena City College flea market, and then on the other side of town the next weekend, I'd be at the Santa Monica Airport flea market. I still go to all of these today. I've always been a loving antiques, flea markets, all that type of stuff. And so I would shop on the weekends. It would give me something to do. I'd pick up little knickknacks. And then when it kind of got into hoarding territory and I had too much, I started offloading and selling it on Cherish. And I was making a little bit of money on the side doing this. And then as I was painting and my paintings were building up, I was like, well, maybe I could try. I already have this online shop on Cherish. Maybe I could put some of my paintings there and see how they do. So my first commissions were to interior designers who were shopping Cherish and just happened to see my paintings listed. So that was really serendipitous.
So it must have been quite a smooth transition then to the point where you were self-sustaining, that you could make a living doing this.
Yeah, well, once I got going on Cherish and my art started picking up, I was like, oh, I just, I'm kind of sitting around waiting for interior designers to find me. And it seems like we're a good match. My work is picking up with this cohort. So then I got, bold, and I was like, well, I'm just going to start cold calling a bunch of interior designers around me in LA and, see if I can get in front of them. Like, what am I doing sitting here? And so I would literally just Google like interior designer 90046. My West Hollywood zip code at the time, and just cold call and cold email. Hey, I'm in LA. Drop by my studio, which at the time was a shoe box, no air conditioning, but and come look. You can come pick stuff out. If you want to borrow something and show your client, all good. I can drop off. I mean, I wanted to roll out the red carpet because it was clear at that point that if you worked well with an interior designer, they'll put you in a bunch of their spaces. Often they're juggling a few different client projects at the same time. So, that was kind of how I really got going. My advice to, new artists all the time is treat your interior designer clients, well, treat everyone very well, but really be accommodating and flexible to your interior designers, because there'll be a jackpot, if you work well together.
Who was influencing you in terms of other designers or painters, artists of any sort? Who floated your boat when you were younger, and then as you were becoming, a conceptual artist yourself?
Well, I've always been a huge Matisse fan, which I think is, evident in the types of shapes that I paint. And I just love how far you can push abstract work. I've always loved Jean Art. Seeing those forms leap from paintings and sketches into sculpture was really eye-opening for me, because it was something I was always doodling in a way, these squiggly shapes, but seeing how they could be really polished and presented, and how you could push it to these elegant sculptures, and realizing them in different dimension and different mediums, that was like a light bulb went off for me. Like, oh, this could be serious. So that was always very, very inspiring for me to see that type of gestural abstract work take on new form, new heights.
How about your color palette? How would you describe that?
Limited. I don't know where this predilection for neutrals and black and white come from. I mean, you could pin it on New York City. It's a very gray place where people wear a lot of black. Personally, I don't really stray from wearing neutrals. I always tell prospective collectors, if you're not sure what color, you want for your art, because I do customize and I offer a range of neutrals. I always tell them, go in your closet and see what the majority color story is, because the odds are what you feel comfortable wearing is what you like being surrounded by and what you're most comfortable living with. So I think I think people's color stories, it's their comfort zone in a way. So it tends to be how they decorate their homes, the art they put on their walls, the colors they wear. It's all normally very consistent.
And how much of your work is commissions now, Hannah?
Most of it is, I would say it's 50-50. It's commissions. It's now my tabletop sculpture. So my menorahs, soon my tissue sculpture. I'm coming out with Shabbat candlesticks. I have some jewelry that I've launched as well. That is becoming a bigger part to my business in general and to my practice. But I think painting is, I think will always be the bedrock. It's where all my ideas stem from. It's putting paintbrush to paper, pen to paper, and that's the origin story of the shapes. And then from there, it's manipulating them into how they can be functional objects and take on 3D form. Actually, most recently, I took the painting that brought my husband and I together. It's the one he bought for me in 2020. I took the shape and I abstracted it into an arch form and made it into the chuppah that we got married under a month ago in Santa Monica. So yeah, it all starts with these shapes that I paint, and then from there it takes on another life.
Well, you are in the center of ever-changing trends and pop culture in LA. I'm wondering how much that informs your art, and in terms of politics as well, or religion. You mentioned the things that you were creating for Hanukkah, the menorah. Talk a little bit about all those cultural vibes that are hanging around you constantly, from film, dance, music, politics, religion. How do you get your arms all around that and your hands into it in terms of your own artwork?
I think it's really important as an artist to go to shows, go to the galleries. A couple months ago, I was so lucky and privileged to get to go to the Venice Biennale. I try to get there every year. It's just like such an infusion of all the best art and architecture from all over the world. It's an incredibly immersive, like potent shock to the system to digest it all. And something my former life at Toby taught me to do is, not just look at the art, but look at the way that it's installed. Look at the catalog and the design of how they're the flyer, any little printed material that you take away from the show. There's a million creative decisions that goes into everything around an art exhibit. Learn from all of it, observe and note all of it, even how the people who work at the gallery speak and how they're talking to you. Always ask, I always like to ask, like, is anything still available? Get a read for what's sitting on the shelf. How much is it? Ask all the questions, like all of that information is power that can only make you better at what you're doing. But then at the same time, put blinders on. So everything that's happening culturally and politically, you don't want to take all of that into the studio with you. And it's funny because I'm certainly listening to that through podcasts and all the news on. But when it comes down to making your own art, you want to be inspired and you want things to inform you. And it all goes in, it's like baking a cake. It all gets in there, but you want to stay true to what you want for yourself. So you have to still design from that selfish place of what am I obsessed with? But then, you're taking nuggets from your exposure to daily life and to, everyone else's creativity. So it's interesting. I would say keeping an ear to the ground and going to shows, going to galleries. I've also found it to be really important and inspiring to have creatives around me. And I'm lucky to have a great friend group of interior designers, architects, fellow artists. It's really nice to have that sort of, stew, that creative stew, that broth that everyone's cooking in. It's great.
What would your teachers have said about you when you were a student? And I'm wondering how that compares with how you feel your personality has changed since you've been a professional artist.
I always loved especially when I came down to art school, I loved school. So I think they would say, the hard worker. And that has stayed with me. I feel like that's the only way to get anywhere is it's just a grind, and especially when you're making art not for not to get good grades, like that's a huge shift because the person that's putting pressure on you now has to be yourself. And also when you're making art for yourself and it's not necessarily commissioned by a collector, you have to hold it to a certain standard. And I think SCAD really gave me that those benchmarks to keep in mind. I only want to put out excellent work. So I think having that rigor is key, because when it's not for someone else and you don't need someone else's approval, it's not a client or collector sign off, it's not your teacher or professor, you're like the last man standing, you're the final boss. You have to be like, okay, this is done, this is excellent, I'm looking at this, there's nothing on here that could be done better. And have I ruined paintings trying to perfect them? Absolutely. It's dangerous territory because knowing when to step away is crucial. But yeah, and it's a delicate balance, and you feel it out. But yeah, I always have my professors' voices in my head. When I was studying fashion at SCAD, I had a professor who would say, you draw your pattern in a very thin pencil line. And she'd be like, okay, do you cut to the left or the right of the pencil line when you cut out the pattern? And she'd be like, the correct answer is you split that line down the middle. It's like that level of precision. And I just love, nuggets like that. I'm energized by that, because it's striving for this level of excellence. And honestly, I don't even think I was that great at that, but I loved the idea, and it's always in my head.
Hi, my name is Teresa Vitale, and I'm a cinematographer who is a guest on the Art Podcast. But here's what I need you to do now. You've got to download and subscribe to the new Call Time Podcast. It's about women in all departments of film and television. And it's available now on all podcast apps. And don't forget to follow at the Call Time Podcast on Instagram. I'll see you there.
So patience and precision and perfection, then, that you embrace all of those now. Do you find you're getting more patient because the goal is perfection?
I hope I'm getting more patient, because I am such an impatient person. So it's interesting you say that. I think I just have two different gears. Like when I'm making work that's going to go to a gallery or to a collector, it's pristine. And that's really probably where I hone the concept of patience, because I will stop at nothing to make it perfect, no matter how many hours I have to sink into it. I'm happy with it. And then for myself, I like this idea of rapid prototyping. So if I have an idea in my head, I really try to shorten the time span between when it occurs to me and when I get the idea and when it comes to life. And so if I have to be sloppy just to get it out, get it on paper, get it in form, get it in my hands, I'll prototype really quickly, warts and all. So then I have it, and then I can say, okay, is this worth taking to the next round? So there's definitely an ugly, impatient era or phase to everything I make. And then it goes through this polishing, more like long-term situation.
You mentioned that you were a workaholic, or that was certainly something that was instilled in you from an early age. I'm wondering how much time you give yourself these days when you're not being creative. That's your you time, not creative time.
I Workaholic for me has never been a dirty word. I'm 100% dedicated to my studio practice, and I feel so lucky every day that I get to do this. I mean, to be an artist who sells their work, it cannot be understated how incredible that is. I'm still pinching myself. And it's funny, like I do a lot of marketing of my work on Instagram. And, the algorithm, you can have a bad day on the algorithm and it can really take your mood, and you can post something that you feel so good about and like it gets, not a lot of likes or not a lot of views, and you can beat yourself up. But what I always come back to is, okay, so let's say it got 50 likes, 100 likes, whatever, and it's not enough. You don't feel like it got the exposure you wanted. Well, that's 100 more people who saw your work that would have if you had it. And then when you say it that way, even 20, okay, well, 20 people liked it. 20 people wouldn't have seen your work had you not posted it. And when I graduated art school in 2010, I think Instagram was like getting going or maybe not up yet. You simply did not have that opportunity to get your work seen by people. You had to go the traditional channels of gallery representation, and it was a totally different game. So really, and I don't even know if this was related to the question you asked, I've totally spaced on it at this point, but you just putting your art out there is so key, and kind of detaching from any expectation of how well a post performed. It doesn't matter, because you have this immense privilege of getting people to see your work that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, artists didn't have. So,
And it's free advertising now. It's all free marketing.
It's free, and it's free. Yes. Exactly. So that is another thing I try to come back to. And Instagram can be draining and TikTok can be draining, but listen, how lucky am I? So back to workaholic. It doesn't feel like work to me. I just feel so lucky. I feel like I won the jackpot. And when, for me, vacation or stepping away from my art tends to be when I'm not in LA, when I'm, I just got back from a beautiful honeymoon. At the end of the year, I'm hoping to show some work at this gallery. It's called Space Gallery that I've been working with for a few years, that is based in New York in St. Bart's. I hope to run that back again this year. That would be for the third time in a row. St. Bart's is a place where I can really disconnect, even though I'm showing my work on the island. That stuff really fills the tank for me. But my time out of the studio, I'm always hunting for inspiration. I'm going to museums anywhere I go. Went to a bunch of museums on my honeymoon. None of it feels like work to me. I don't mind. I've never really subscribed to the concept of burnout for me. I've never experienced it. I kind of just love it all. I don't mind working a late night, working on weekends. Sometimes I'll get frazzled, and then, you get one really good night's sleep in and you're back.
How does your husband feel about it, that he's given you up completely to art? He accepts that, obviously, because that's what he bought into. So there is no transition then from the artist to the wife now, the domestic side of you, the work outside, the life outside the studio.
No, not so much. And he's always, I think it's something he really loves about me. He's always like, you're a beast. Like, you're just you're like, you're a badass. He seems to, I know he really respects it and loves that. And he helps me so much on the business side of things. We've been joking that he's my COO, but it's really true. And especially during the holiday season when I have, the sort of manufacturing arm of my studio really ramps up around the menorahs and soon the Shabbat candles. He is like linchpin to the everything running smoothly. So he's he rolls up his sleeves. He's in it with me as well. And he's just got a brilliant business mind on him, brilliant with marketing and strategy. So we're kind of a team.
Now, what do your parents say about the artist you've become?
They're super proud. I think we're all still a bit in shock. No, I mean, it's just, even though I went to art school and I've always been doing this and I was surrounded by art, I never really thought of it as a viable career path, something that could be sustainable and could put food on the table, because it always seemed to me like winning a lottery ticket. And there's a very practical, pragmatic side to me, and my parents are very much like that as well, that, I was always prepared to leave art school and be an assistant designer at J. Crew, which I did for a year, or, work in the e-com team at Tory Burch. I did for freelance for a few months, or, my corporate job as a, creative consultant and analyst. And I probably would have been very happy doing any of that. So it's like miraculous that this whole, that I have the opportunity to do this. So they're proud, they're supportive, they want to steer me in the right way. It's funny because I'm my own boss now, and, I got to stay focused, but all that comes really naturally to me. Like I grew up in a household where my parents worked around like nonstop. That was just what you did. And I loved it. I always thought it was cool. I thought it was admirable. And so I think I'm a chip off the old block.
So in terms of ambitions and goals then in the foreseeable future, Hannah, what's on your menu?
I'm launching the tissue sculpture. I'm launching Shabbat candlesticks. So I'm excited to continue exploring tabletop sculpture. What's on our tables? How can we make it more beautiful while still being functional? That is a huge North Star for me. And then, of course, just coming back to livable, energetic art. Hannah Polskin is coming for your whole house. Like, what can I do? Doors, doorways. How am I recreating things in my style and putting my stamp on all aspects of the home? And it's a general calling that I feel towards this, but over time, specific things crop up for me that I really want to focus on. So this year it's been the tissue box, and I kind of like how niche and almost random that feels. And I think, that's how this sort of lifelong project of mine will evolve. It's every year I want a new item to hone in on, and specifically look at what's the Hannah Polskin version of this? And then I'm going to be expanding my jewelry line. At the moment, it's currently a Star of David. And I'm going into working with old Roman coins. I love anywhere I can get antiques into my work, because I'm, such a thrifter and total flea market fan. I'm always, thrifting and getting antiques. I love finding the intersection between that and my work. So I'm also going to be incorporating Roman coins into my jewelry and, exploring my Judaica line further. So now I have my chuppah. I'm looking to make custom chuppahs for brides. I think that could be an incredible continuation of looking into Judaica, and really something I'd be honored to do because it's bringing people together in love. And then also I am trying to convince my landlord to let me paint our pool. So that's, I've got to drain it, got to seal it, scrub it down, all the things. But I'm so informed by the places I create in and the spaces I live in that really steers the direction of my art.
If you were to summarize your style, how would you describe it?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think there's an energy to the shapes I create. When I started painting like this in 2016, it was almost like therapy for me. I was, in a very sort of fragile state. I was, lonely, and I needed this self-care. And these shapes really were like a therapy session. And I hope that they imbue that therapeutic value in them for the beholder and for the collector. I hope it keeps a piece of that with it. For me, it's like I'm painting a certain energy or wavelength. And that's something that I really hope comes through when you look at my work. And all the loops and curves, for me, they almost stir the molecules in the air, and they have an energy to them. So I don't know if I would summarize it as a wavelength or an energy, but there's like a life force to these curves and bends that I paint, and it's that feeling that I'm trying to tap into, that calmness, the serenity, and energy is something that I think defines my work.
Well, it sounds as though you've got a very big bucket list, Hannah.
Yes.
Lots on your to-do list, and it's going to be exciting. I think you have such a creative mind and in so many different directions.
Thank you.
I want to wish you the very best of luck with all of it. And thank you for taking time to come on the podcast.
It's a pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
And we're going to hop over now to our YouTube channel, where Hannah and I are going to talk about a couple of other things that we didn't have time for here. So I hope you'll join us there. But for now, again, my thanks to my guest this week, Hannah Polskin. Hannah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And remember to slide down the show notes where you'll find a link to Hannah's social media and her website. You'll also find a link to our social media. You can follow us on Instagram, and you can also reach us via email at theartpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget 2 A's for art. And if you've been following season 3, you'll know that we have the after show on YouTube, where there's bonus content there as our guests stay on for a little while to have a chat with me about other things that we didn't have time for on the podcast. So hop over to our YouTube channel, just look for The Art Podcast, and you'll find all our guests from season 3. My thanks again to my guest this week, Hannah Polskin, and to you for listening. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time when my guest will be the photographer Barbara Nitger, so I do hope you'll join me then.